In this video, I'll introduce lights in 3ds Max. Before I get into lighting the station, I'll look a little bit at what lights are and how they behave. I'll put a plane in my scene and maybe a box subbing in for a wall or something similar. I'll drag it up. Right now, my scene is lit by the default lights. We can't see them and they go away when we put other lights in. In this case, the default lights help us to see the scene. I've pressed G to turn off my grid and I'll right-click to stop making boxes. To make lights, we can choose on the command panel Create and the Lights button. And under Lights we have Photometric, the default lights of 3ds Max, and Standard. Photometric lights behave like true light bulbs, and that's how they think they should behave. Standard lights are arbitrary, meaning we decide how they should look. Now we have a good deal of flexibility with all of these, but there's different behaviors for each. With photometrics, there's a target and a free, and they're essentially the same, except for the target light having a target we can select. I'll click on Free Light, and one of the things it'll do is say, would you like to use an exposure control? And the reason we do this is that lights need to be seen by a camera to look correctly. And if they aren't seen by a camera, they are essentially way too bright to see. So we tone map them with a photographic exposure, allowing us to see the lights through a certain camera setting. I'll click Yes, and then I'll make a light in the scene. Instantly my scene goes dark on the bottom because my light is on the floor. I'll right-click to stop creating lights, and that's an important step. If you don't do that, every click will make a new light. I'll press W to move and pull this light up, and we can see it is stunningly bright in the scene. As I pull this light back, we'll start to see some of the shade come back in the scene, and this is because the light is behaving photometrically correctly. It understands that light falls off over distance. Now I haven't dealt with my exposure at all. I'm still sort of seeing it at the way it put it in. But what we're seeing here is that this light starts here and radiates out in all directions, lighting up my scene. Not necessarily shadowing, but just lighting. In our lights then, the things we want to think about first are, where is it? And what is the shape of that light? We've got templates we can start with here, some common bulbs we use in a lot of places. We've also got ways to deal with shadows, and different ways of specifying a light type and shape, because different lights and different bulbs give us different qualities and different shapes of light. So we'll place lights in, and understand that the lights think they should fade over distance. Then we'll give them color and intensity, how bright are the lights in the scene. And finally, we'll adjust the exposure, here in the Environment and Effects dialog, accessible by pressing 8 or choosing Rendering and Environment. We have a photographic exposure. We can work with some familiar things, ISO, f-stop, shutter speed, or an exposure value depending on your preference, and see the light correctly. Now let's get started putting lights in our train station.